All right, so I'm not going to sing the song, but love you, Blue.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. Sometimes we're twice a day. Like today, we have a little bit bonus episode on all things blue. Remember to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We're there every day of the week, every weekday that is for sure. Make sure you hit subscribe though, and if you are on YouTube, it is good to see you again as we get towards 1,500 subscribers. We're giving away a Locked On Cougs hat at 1,500. It's got the Cougar ball on the front, Locked on the side, all kinds of fun stuff. So hit subscribe. We are almost there. We're going to get to someone liking and commenting on the video. So once we are done with this episode, if you have nothing else to say about the blue uniforms, or you're just still in shock that they are even happening, tell us in the comments down below. Okay, I guess we asked about a muffin being a cupcake before. If it's not a cupcake, is it a scone? All right. Today, we do need to break down the blue uniforms themselves. We will break it down with audio as well, but obviously the visual side of this, you can see the pictures a little bit. Exciting Thursday for the U of H as they head into their first ever Big 12 season with UTSA coming to town on Saturday. They're going to break out a brand new themed uniform. So without further ado, let's just bump on into it and show what the uniform looks like. So this is a photo, I guess it's from the university athletic staff, was circulating the internet, but this is the uniform. You notice it is a Houston Oilers copycat uniform in so many ways. You got the white pants with the red and blue stripes on the side, the blue jersey, powder blue, white numbers, red outline, the script Houston across the front, not script Cougars, script Houston across the front. You got the stripes on the sleeve. You got the numbers at the TV spot. The helmet is white with a red, white, and blue stripe down the middle. And on the sides of the helmet, you have the same script Houston, this time in light blue, powder blue, with the outline being in a Houston Cougar red. Now, a couple things about this as we do get into looking at what exactly led us to this point. First, I think it's worth pointing out that there were several moments where we had hints being dropped. And I want to go back to the start of these hints being dropped as Houston's been approaching this week in this game through marketing for a couple weeks now. They've been dropping things for us to follow along with and kind of get in on the clues. And so as someone who picked up on a couple and was working the back channel this a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit through about what those were. You'll notice in like there was a random video a while back now getting ready for the first game about like representing Houston, and it showed like old like hip hop Houston video slab type cars, right? The candy paint, that kind of stuff. And it really focused on a blue one. That was a hint, right? And the ad where they showed like the guys walking into the game with all the people cheering them on from last year, they actually shot it last year. Looked like, because Clayton was kind of key in front and center in the video. They zoomed in on Clayton's hat multiple times. Clayton's hat had the script Houston across it. Right, key hint there. And then in the final game one poster they put out, they had Houston Cougar football players sitting on top of the blue car, another hint. But then at the top of the poster again, they also had an Astrodome, as in where once upon a time the Cougs and certainly the Oilers both played football, right? So this idea of getting towards this has been slowly leaked little by little. Now, I have to admit, when I first heard about this on Tuesday, I was hearing about, maybe it was Wednesday, but I will say Wednesday. Anyway, what I was hearing was that the kids were super excited, super stoked. Pesman showed them the uniform, and on Thursday morning, they showed the video without showing the uniform of Pesman showing off the uniform to the kids, and the kids' reactions ecstatic. Go check it out on the Houston Football Twitter. It's a fun reaction to watch. And so the kids were excited when I first heard about it. And I'd actually heard that they might try and keep it under wraps all the way up until kickoff. Like there was talk about, do they even like come out and warm up in one thing and play in another, or do they wait till warm up and people just go, oh my God, they got white pants on with blue stripes. What does that mean? And then boom, come on, the white and the blue jerseys after they've seen a little bit of pants or whatever. All kinds of fun stuff like that was in the works. But I do think also, much like I had heard something, there were people on social media kind of hinting at this over the course of the day, Tuesday and Wednesday. And so then they rolled out with the video with Carl Lewis's voice in the background on Thursday. Carl Lewis voiced a long soliloquy, a couple minutes long, to Houston, and he continued to say, "Love you, Houston," tying back to the old Houston Oilers anthem from the 70s, right? When the Houston Oilers, remember, in the 70s, did try and tie in some college atmosphere kinds of things to the program in the NFL, which didn't like jive with everyone necessarily, but it was things like fight songs and things, cheerleaders and pom poms that did dance routines more similar to what college cheerleaders have been doing and all that kind of stuff, right? And the saying was, "Love you, Blue." It was much more like a college kind of, go Cougs. It was "Love you, Blue." That was their thing. And so Carl Lewis is alluding to that with the "Love you, Houston" over and over throughout the video, ultimately leading us to the end of the video that showed the uniform. And we'll go back to the picture for a second. And in the end of the video, you see multiple shots of, it's actually a GA doing the posing and stuff, it looked like on the internet. But and then 11, because 11 is retired Andre Ware, right? Walking around and showing off the new Houston Cougar uniform. Now, I have to say that, first of all, we should also back up and say sounds like the Houston Cougar coaching staff will have like hats with the same script, and I'm sure they'll have a polo. It's easy enough to make blue polos and that kind of stuff too. You'll also see, I think I posted a picture on Twitter, but the end zones are going to have blue script writing, much like the helmets that say Houston Cougars. So it'll all be kind of the same vein. It's a really, really cool look that they're going with and going full force with it. Now, a couple of common questions have been on the internet about merch. Initially, they would sound like that they had no plans for merch rollout, and then very quickly, Joseph Duarte, the Chronicle, got connections, and he pointed out that he tweeted out a quick bit about, it looks like there is merch being planned, but it is not ready to be rolled out yet. So there will be powder blue Houston Cougar merch available at some point. Now, in the comments down below, you can give me your opinion on this. I think that as big a swing and home run as the uniforms are themselves, and I think that they are, we'll get to more of that in a second, not having the merch available yet, like at the moment the thing dropped on the internet, like on the bookstore website or on Dick's or whatever, that I think is a miss. Now, if they prove me wrong and sell a bunch of stuff at the game this Saturday, maybe, but it didn't sound like they were necessarily quite ready to roll out that stuff that fast. And I can go into a long bit about that, but I'd rather you tell me in the comments down below what you think about all that, because I do think the no merch thing might have been a miss, because we're anticipating a fun game this weekend and so on and so forth. But if, all chaos breaks loose and something goes wrong, or, if a couple weeks from now, we don't look back and think about the first game against UTSA being so big, we think about the TCU game being so big or whatever, you might have missed a moment. I will still, if you can't tell, this is actually Houston Rockets from when they wore light blue, and this is more of a, just a Houston Astros hat, but I do like the light blue with Houston. I do tie light blue to Houston in a weird way. We'll talk more about in a moment. But just because I'm going to buy it doesn't mean everyone will. So we'll see how those numbers look when they do drop. I do think, though, the overarching theme of this is that this was a home run. The uniforms are beautiful. They executed it perfectly, to the point where even Houston being across the chest in script makes it a clear alternate, but also it's not the block lettering. It's not the clunky block lettering. It's script and fast, which with all the logos on the jersey, you got the sleeve logo being, just on the short sleeve there, and then the numbers on the top and those kinds of things. It fits better than the like big block lettering across the whole front would be. It get really, really crowded really, really fast. The Oilers thing is very clear and crisp from the start, whether it's the striping on the pants, the color blue itself, or the helmet, any of it. It's all very clear and obviously the Houston Oilers. And so that's a fun throwback as well. I love, frankly, that they're getting to this before Tennessee can. If you are not in Houston Texans Twitter, the Tennessee Titans are rolling out their own Houston Oilers throwback, because obviously that's where the Oilers moved to. And they're wearing Houston Oilers uniforms, even though they're no longer in Houston. And that I've got a lot of problems with that. We can talk about a different time. But they're specifically wearing them to play the Texans this year. And that's caused a lot of stir. As good as the uniforms look, that caused a lot of stir. And I think it's perfect that the Houston Cougars are wearing their Houston Oilers throwbacks before the Tennessee Titans have a chance to. And so that's a fun part of this as well, that at least I'm taking solace in. Tell us down below if you think that you are taking solace in that as well. Aside from just like me liking the dig there at Tennessee and those kinds of things, the reception around this has been fantastic. Sports Illustrated call them glorious. National football writers are calling it one of the best uniforms of the year already. People are saying, can we give this, how often can they wear this? Again, this is the national perception of Houston. Houston's gaining national attention just by rolling out some new threads, right? I think that national perception, this is awesome. It's great for the program. We talk about recruits. These are the kinds of things that kids care about. How did Chip Kelly build up Oregon? They wore something different every week, right? This is not an accident. This is like a very cool thing to do for the city, especially when you're trying to bring Houston kids to your campus and keep Houston kids in Houston, right? This is showing, look, we are connecting to the city. Now, I will say, in posting about this on social media and getting excited about this on social media and all that kind of stuff, I frankly had tweeted out something on Wednesday with some of the hints picture and just had like the shrug emoji. And there were people in my mentions then that were like, no, they can't do a light blue uniform. That's not Houston, right? People are talking about they'll connect the blue Houston uniform to SMU, Memphis, whomever, to make it well, just like any other blue uniform. That's so clearly not the case and missing the boat. I think folks that are a little bit older generation than myself, maybe old school, we'll say, maybe old at heart, even not old in soul, or old in age. I think the thing they're having trouble with is Houston has always been identified as red and white, and there was a bit of time where it was navy, and like that didn't feel like Houston necessarily. Now that's around the time I started falling in love with this place, right? But that's neither here nor there. People associate Houston with red and white, so when you start seeing blue on things, like, wait a second, that's not us. But I think that misses the mark on what they're trying to do with this. And I think that's a shame because what they're trying to do with this is so obvious, right? Light blue and the Oilers are what people associate with Houston as a city nationally for a long time. Yes, like the Houston Astros are really, really good in the sports world right now, right? The dynasty that they've built, and we'll see if they go into the World Series run, But that's very, very recently, right? If you go back and look at stuff from the old Astrodome and stuff like that, like the ball gets lost in the white ceiling tiles for the first year or two, right? Like this was kind of like the Bad News Bears for a minute with the Houston Astros there in the early days. The Rockets, while they had the Akeem Olajuwon era and stuff like that, pre Ralph Sampson, like you're looking at individual players, but not a ton of crazy team success, right? And so it wasn't like a national brand, especially because the NBA was not the same kind of national brand either, right? The Oilers were the brand, right? That was the city as far as what sports fans outside saw. It was Bum Phillips, it was the big starter jackets, it was the big cowboy hats, it was all of those kinds of things on the sidelines in the Astrodome for Houston. And this harkens to that Houston. This is, if you're talking about a school that is for the city, this goes to that. Wade Phillips, I think we talk about Bum Phillips. Wade Phillips' his son and former Houston Texans coach, and those, he's been around the NFL a long time, so I tag him to the Texans, but he's been with a lot of people. He also mentioned, I guess people also tie him to the Cowboys, but he also mentioned that on Twitter that this is awesome to see. He almost felt honored that his family is tied to the Oilers and a part of it at all, right? He was excited to see that this is saying in Houston, these colors belong in Houston. This colorway ties to Houston, whether it's, again, Love You Blue from the 70s or Travis Scott sneakers in the 2000s. This color is a Houston branding strategy. It's also, for the folks that don't like that it's not just red and white, it's also just an alternate. Alternate means alternative. They're wearing this thing. It looks like maybe just one time ever, right? This is not some big ordeal where you have to see blue every Sunday or every Saturday or rebuy all your Houston Cougar gear in blue. The stadium will still be painted red, right? It'll be a sea of red, people there cheering on Houston and UTSA. That's not going to impact those kinds of things at all. I do have to say, though, I think one genius part of this is I don't know of another alternate uniform you could have had that would do all these different things, that would connect the young, current, modern fan with the older city of Houston football fan. How would you tie in the history of Houston culture and sports into a modern version of this football team as you enter the Big 12 and try and officially take the city for yourself, right? We've seen Houston get poached by Texas, A&M, LSU, etc. To take the city back, you've got to find a way to connect to all of those people all over the city and do it in some form or fashion, an alternate uniform, some sort of rebranding, remarketing can do that. You're taking back and taking in all of those people. And we've seen intentional efforts from a number of sports programs at Houston, whether it's the hashtag for the city campaign that the basketball team does, or Houston with the UNS capitalized, like we've seen a couple different sports teams do. The women's basketball and the women's volleyball team do the Be Someone, alluding to the graffiti over the top of the I-45. It's like, I think it's not quite a bridge, but it's over the top I-45, right? This year, it looks like the Houston Cougar football team is using team together everyone achieves more, if you go in all caps, is what I typically see put there, right? All of those are to say that if you're going to try and connect to the city, right, finding some way to go to the city's history is the way to do it. And if you went back to Houston Cougar history, they've worn throwbacks before with the skinny UH and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine. That works. That's a fun alternate as well. But that only gets to a portion of the city for a number of reasons, whether it's being locked out of the Big 12 in the 90s, whether it's not everyone that's still around that was a big fan of the Bill Yeoman era or whatever, that only is going to reach a portion of the city. Having a Houston Oilers throwback like this is going to connect to a bigger swath of fans, a bigger group of people, a larger array of voices, and Houston are going to connect with what they see there. Frankly, it's interesting to see like other national writers talking about like national writers that focus on other teams in Texas, right? Whether it's, TCU or Texas or whatever, all commenting on how well this got pulled off. I want to say quick kudos to the marketing and to the branding and to the equipment people for getting this all together and having this orchestrated in the way it did. Obviously, like I said, I wish there were merch for sale right away on the website. Boom, could order it when I saw the video pop up online. But I also get that sometimes the moment is about enjoying what we get to watch and not necessarily going to the super capitalist consumer thing. The product in the field this weekend is going to be awesome. It's so great to see these guys get something like, the kids video, again, I say, go back to the Houston Cougar Twitter page or the social media handles and find the guys going crazy at the thought of this uniform. It's an awesome, awesome video. And frankly, the first messaging I was getting about it was from people saying the kids are crazy excited for this. I can't believe these kids, many of whom were born around 2000, not in a Houston Oilers world, are that ecstatic about it. And so when I say that this connects a lot of different generations of Houstonians, that's what we're talking about here. I'm happy to talk all things Houston Cougars and the light blue uniforms on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, whatever you want. You can find me at Painsworth512 on all of your social media handles. I'll be talking about all things uniforms and Houston Cougars all weekend, I'm sure. We also have a football game to play. We're not just going to dress up. So we'll be talking about that in another episode out today, a full-length episode about the actual game itself and some of the key matchups in that game. So make sure you go for your second listen of the day. Go check out the Locked On Cougs regular episode. We'll be talking about Houston and UTSA. Make sure you follow us and hit subscribe each and every day. Locked On Cougs, primarily Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.